Imagine having blood pressure so violently high that simply bending over to tie your shoes could literally explode your brain.
Which is, a terrifying thought.
Right. To survive that kind of extreme hydrostatic pressure every single day, you'd need biological engineering so advanced, so mathematically flawless, that human aerospace engineers would eventually have to steal your blueprints.
Just to keep astronauts from blacking out in orbit, yeah.
Exactly. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at the daily reality of a creature you probably think you know everything about. The giraffe.
Yeah, it's a creature that really just defies the basic laws of physics and biology at almost every turn. I mean, we all have this ingrained picture book image of, a gentle spotted giant peacefully chewing on acacia leaves.
The classic Toys R Us mascot vibe.
Exactly. But the actual mechanics required to keep that animal alive for a single afternoon are staggeringly violent.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to take this massive stack of physiological research, evolutionary data, and behavioral ecology, and basically extract the insights that completely dismantle that cartoonish childhood image for you.
Because the reality is so much weirder.
Yeah.
We're talking about extreme physical engineering, a raging taxonomic debate tearing through the scientific community, and a newly discovered matriarchal society that communicates in frequencies we can't even hear.
Which is just wild. But to understand how an animal ends up with an anatomy that reads like a sci-fi novel, I guess we have to look at the crucible that forged it, right?
Right. And for the giraffe, that crucible was a catastrophic climate shift.
Yeah.
So if we go back about 8 million years ago, the African continent was dominated by these continuous, really dense, lush tropical forests.
Okay.
But then the global climate drastically cooled and dried out. Those vast forests began to splinter and recede, and they were replaced by open, arid savannas.
So if you're a forest-dwelling herbivore, you're adapted to eating soft, low-hanging tropical vegetation. And suddenly your food supply is just evaporating. It's like your favorite all-you-can-eat buffet suddenly moving all the food to the top shelf.
That's a perfect way to put it. The ground-level foliage on this new savanna is tough. It's nutrient poor, and it's highly contested by literally every other grazing animal. The only untouched buffet is 20 feet up in the canopy of these drought-resistant trees.
The ones that actually survived the climate shift.
Exactly. So it was an absolute biological mandate: adapt to the canopy or go extinct. And the fossil record actually gives us a beautiful snapshot of this exact transition. Paleontologists discovered an extinct relative called Samotherium.
Samotherium. Okay.
Yeah, and when you analyze its cervical vertebrae, the neck bones, the elongation mechanics are already actively at work. Its neck length sits perfectly halfway between a modern giraffe and the giraffe's closest living relative, which is the okapi.
Oh, the okapi. That's a fascinating counterexample, actually. It looks like a hybrid between a deer and a zebra.
Yeah, it really does.
And it survived because its specific ancestral lineage just never left the dense rainforests of Central Africa. It never faced that evolutionary pressure to reach higher.
Right, it stayed in the buffet line that didn't move the food to the top shelf. But out on the unforgiving savanna, the giraffe's ancestors were caught in this millions of years long arms race for altitude.
Which is just a crazy visual.
It really is. And that relentless drive upward caused a massive evolutionary radiation across the African continent. Populations spread out, adapting to slightly different regional pressures over millions of years, which actually is exactly what triggered the current taxonomic crisis you mentioned earlier.
Oh, right. We're currently watching the scientific community tear up hundreds of years of established biology regarding what a giraffe actually is.
Yeah, it's a huge mess right now.
Because if you open a textbook from even 10 years ago, it will tell you there is exactly one species of giraffe. Giraffa camelopardalis, I think.
Okay.
A classification handed down by Carl Linnaeus back in 1758.
Yep, the one and only.
But then two massive genomic sequencing studies, one in 2016 and another in 2021, just completely upended that. They looked deeply into the DNA and concluded there aren't one, but 4 distinct species.
4 species, yeah. The northern, the southern, the reticulated, and the Maasai giraffes. And then those are further divided into 7 subspecies.
Which is a huge jump from just one.
It is. The sequencing revealed a staggering degree of genetic isolation. The DNA evidence shows that some of these populations haven't exchanged a single strand of genetic material in the wild for 1 to 2 million years.
Wait, 2 million years?
Yeah. They are literally as genetically distinct from each other as a polar bear is from a brown bear.
Okay, but I have to challenge this conclusion a bit.
So sure.
In evolutionary biology, we're increasingly using what are called multi-species coalescent methods, essentially using highly sensitive statistical algorithms to analyze tiny, tiny differences in allele frequencies over time.
Right, the supercomputer approach.
Exactly. So are scientists just splitting hairs here? If two giraffes look identical to the naked eye and occupy similar ecological niches, does labeling them as four separate species actually matter, or is it just giving geneticists more papers to publish?
No, it's a completely valid critique.
Yeah.
And oversplitting is a very real danger when you rely purely on these hypersensitive algorithmic models. You run the risk of labeling a localized family group as an entirely new species just because, well, they haven't migrated recently.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the broader scientific consensus is backing the four-species model because the conservation implications are just dire.
How so?
Well, think about it. If management authorities operate under the assumption that there are 100,000 individuals of a single giraffe species, the population seems relatively robust, right?
Yeah, 100,000 sounds like a lot.
But if you accept the genomic reality that these are four distinct evolutionary lineages, the math becomes terrifying. The northern giraffe, for instance, only has a few thousand individuals left.
Oh, wow, that changes everything.
Exactly. If you manage them as one monolithic group, you risk letting a unique 2-million-year-old genetic lineage quietly vanish entirely.
Because you can't enact protective legislation for an animal that the law doesn't formally recognize as existing.
Precisely. And keeping these distinct genetic lineages alive is critical because, the end result of that 8-million-year climb to the canopy produced a biological machine that operates right on the razor's edge of physical impossibility.
Yeah, let's talk about that biology because it all comes down to hemodynamics, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
When your brain is suspended 20 feet in the air, gravity isn't just a physical constant anymore. It's an active, relentless enemy trying to drain the blood out of your skull.
And to fight that, the giraffe relies on an engine of just massive proportions. I was geeking out over the raw numbers in the research. The heart weighs roughly 25 pounds.
25 pounds.
And it measures 2 feet in length. The walls of the left ventricle are nearly 3 inches of solid muscle.
It's basically a boulder in their chest.
Right. It beats 150 times a minute, generating a blood pressure that is literally double that of a healthy human. It acts like an industrial water pump, violently forcing blood up a 2-meter vertical pipe against the total weight of gravity.
But see, solving that upward gravity problem immediately creates a lethal downward gravity problem.
Because they have to drink.
Exactly. Think of the giraffe as a walking multi-story water tower. When it lowers its head to drink from a watering hole, that 2-meter vertical pipe is suddenly inverted.
Yeah.
So now you have a 25-pound heart pumping at double human pressure, but gravity is accelerating that blood flow directly toward the brain. By all laws of mammalian physiology, the capillaries in the brain should rupture instantly.
The brain should just explode from the rush of blood.
Yeah, really should.
But the biological solution here is incredible. It's a structure called the retet mirabile, which is Latin for wonderful net.
Such a great name for it.
It really is. It's this highly complex network of elastic blood vessels situated in the upper neck just below the brain. So when the giraffe drops its head, this vascular net acts like a pressure release baffle. The vessels physically expand to absorb the massive influx of blood volume. They slow the velocity and dissipate the pressure before it can hit the delicate brain tissue.
And the really wild thing is the fail-safes work in reverse as well.
Oh, when they stand back up.
Right. When the giraffe suddenly lifts its head back up, all that blood should instantly rush back down into the torso, which would cause massive hypoxia, and they totally lose consciousness.
Just pass out into the watering hole.
Exactly. But the jugular veins are equipped with a series of heavy-duty one-way valves. The moment the head rises, these valves snap shut, physically trapping the blood in the upper neck and brain, just long enough for the heart to overcome gravity and resume the upward supply.
That is flawless engineering. And the engineering is just as extreme down at ground level, too. Think about the hydrostatic pressure pressing down on a giraffe's lower legs.
Oh, it's immense.
The sheer weight of that vertical column of fluid should cause the blood to pool in the lower extremities, forcing plasma out of the capillaries and causing severe edema, swelling that would just destroy the tissue.
Yeah. And to prevent that, the anatomy relies on extreme mechanical counterpressure.
Right. The skin and fascia on the lower legs are composed of this dense, highly interwoven matrix of thick collagen fibers. It is incredibly tight and almost entirely inelastic. It physically restricts the blood vessels from expanding under the massive internal fluid pressure.
It's like a biological compression sock.
Exactly. And it is so mathematically perfect that aerospace engineers use the exact properties of a giraffe's leg fascia to design the modern G-suit.
Which is just crazy to think about.
Right. Fighter pilots and astronauts wear these pressurized suits to mechanically squeeze their lower extremities during high G acceleration. It forces the blood back up into the brain to prevent them from passing out. We literally went to space using a biological schematic designed by a savanna herbivore.
It really is the ultimate example of biomimicry. But, the entire circulatory system we just described exists solely to support the defining architectural feature of the animal, the neck itself.
Right, which introduces a really surprising anatomical quirk. Despite having a neck that can exceed 6 feet in length, a giraffe has the exact same number of cervical vertebrae as a human being. Just 7.
7. Yeah, that constraint is deeply hardwired into mammalian genetics.
Yeah.
Whether you're a mouse, a human, or a whale, you generally get 7 neck vertebrae.
But the giraffe maximizes those 7 bones. Each vertebra is over 11 inches long. And unlike human vertebrae, which are connected by relatively flat, planar joints that limit our range of motion,
Right.
a giraffe's vertebrae are connected by highly flexible ball and socket joints similar to the human shoulder. So the mechanical structure is clear. But why did it evolve this way? This brings up a surprisingly fierce evolutionary debate.
It really does. For over a century, the scientific community just accepted Charles Darwin's competing browsers hypothesis. The idea was simple. Necks grew long simply so the animals could reach the high canopy leaves that antelopes couldn't access.
Right, the food scarcity argument.
Exactly. It's an elegant, intuitive explanation. But recently, this highly aggressive counter-theory gained massive traction in evolutionary biology, called the sexual selection hypothesis. And this theory completely discards the food argument. Instead, it posits that the neck evolved as a weapon.
Specifically for a brutal combat style called necking.
Yes. When two male giraffes compete for mating rights, they stand side by side, spread their legs for stability, and basically use their massive necks as giant pendulums to swing their heavily reinforced skulls into the ribs and flanks of their opponent.
Ouch.
Yeah, the physics of a 2-meter pendulum carrying a dense bone mass at the end generates devastating kinetic energy. These blows regularly shatter jaws, cave in ribs, and frequently result in the death of the loser.
Wait, so is it about getting food or getting a date?
Well, the sexual selection theory argued that males who randomly mutated slightly longer, thicker necks won more of these gladiator matches, monopolized the females, and passed on the long neck genetics. It framed the entire species architecture around male violence.
Which makes a kind of grim sense.
It does. What's fascinating here is a massive paradigm shift that just occurred in 2024. A comprehensive new study analyzed the detailed body proportions of hundreds of individuals across different species. And the researchers found that while males absolutely possess thicker necks to withstand the impacts of combat,
Right.
the females actually have proportionally longer necks relative to their body mass.
Wait, really? The females?
Yes, which fundamentally shatters the sexual selection hypothesis.
Yeah.
Because if the neck length was driven primarily by male combat, the males should have the longest necks.
That makes total sense. So why do females have the longer necks?
Because female giraffes spend the vast majority of their adult lives either pregnant, with a gestation period of over 400 days, by the way,
Wow, over a year.
or actively lactating. The caloric demands placed on their bodies are astronomical.
So it comes back to the nutritional burden. Mothers have to sustain themselves and their calves.
Exactly. The researchers concluded that the extreme elongation of the neck was driven specifically by the immense nutritional burden placed on mothers. The extra length allows females to forage much deeper into the dense, thorny canopy, accessing premium calories with high mechanical efficiency.
So Darwin's food-based theory was right all along.
Pretty much, yeah. But the driving evolutionary force wasn't just general competition with other species, it was the intense energetic demands of female reproduction.
That is amazing. The iconic shape of the species was engineered by working mothers trying to keep their offspring alive, not by males beating each other senseless.
Precisely.
And I imagine that female-driven necessity cascades directly into how they structure their entire society, right? Because the way they use their necks for survival naturally leads into how they interact with each other.
Oh, absolutely. Because of the caloric demands that keep them foraging in the canopy also dictate how they communicate and survive. And it turns out their social lives are incredibly complex.
Which is funny because for a long time there was this myth that giraffes are completely mute.
Yeah, field biologists completely misunderstood their social dynamics for decades because of that. The assumption was that pushing a sufficient volume of air up a 2-meter trachea to vibrate vocal cords was physically impossible.
But it's a total myth. They snort, they sneeze, they hiss, and creepily enough, they hum to each other at night.
They do. And they don't just hum normally, they utilize Helmholtz resonance.
Okay, break that down for us.
It's a brilliant acoustic mechanism. Helmholtz resonance is the exact same physical principle that produces a low-frequency tone when you blow air over the open mouth of an empty glass bottle.
Oh, right, like that deep hollow sound.
Yeah, the air inside the cavity oscillates, creating a deep sound wave. The giraffe essentially uses its massive, rigid trachea as a giant resonating bottle. By manipulating airflow through that huge cavity, they produce infrasound.
Which is so low that human ears can't even detect it.
Right. It allows them to communicate across vast distances in the dark without alerting predators like lions or hyenas, whose hearing is tuned to much higher frequencies.
That is so smart. And that covert communication network is totally necessary because their social structure is highly complex. Ecologists describe it as a fission fusion society.
Yeah, it's a great term.
It makes me think of a complex high school cafeteria dynamic. You have a broad community of hundreds of individuals occupying a general region, but they constantly break off into small, temporary cliques of 4 or 5 based on immediate needs, like seeking out a specific water source or navigating a dense thicket. And then they just dissolve and form entirely new groupings the next day.
They do, but within that constant fluidity, the females form highly selective, long-term matrilineal bonds. They choose their associates carefully, often based on kinship. And this isn't just casual socializing. It is a measurable survival metric.
Wait, really? Their friendships keep them alive?
Yes. Extensive field studies demonstrate a direct statistical correlation between an adult female's survival rate and the density of her social network. The more established connections she maintains within that fission fusion dynamic, the longer she lives.
Wow. So the females are building these deeply rooted, life-saving support networks.
Exactly. The males, on the other hand, operate on a slightly different wavelength. Their behavior is largely driven by reproductive opportunity, which leads to some incredible physiological workarounds.
Yeah, some really bizarre behaviors here.
Very bizarre. To determine if a female in the herd is fertile, the male utilizes what's called the Fleeman response. He will literally ingest the female's urine, pulling the fluid over a specialized cluster of sensory cells located in the roof of his mouth called the vomeronasal organ.
Okay, gross but fascinating.
Right. This organ bypasses the standard olfactory system entirely and directly processes the pheromones and estrus hormones present in the urine. It gives the male an instantaneous, chemically precise reading of her reproductive status.
And the social dynamics following male interactions are equally wild. After 2 males spend half an hour engaged in a brutal necking duel to establish dominance, the violence almost immediately transitions into intense same-sex affection.
It's true.
Observational studies note that up to 94% of mounting incidents occur between males, typically directly following a fight.
Yeah, it appears to be a complex physical mechanism for de-escalating tension and re-establishing a peaceful social hierarchy.
It's like, we fought, now we're bros again.
Basically, the entire social fabric requires constant maintenance and immense environmental awareness. But that exact same extreme circulatory system we discussed earlier, the high blood pressure and the rigid leg fascia, becomes a massive, deadly liability when the animal has to sleep.
Because transitioning a 2,000-pound animal with a 6-foot neck from the ground back to a standing position takes several awkward, highly unbalanced seconds.
Right.
And out in the African bush, those seconds are the exact window a lion needs to execute a fatal strike. So because of this mechanical vulnerability, giraffes sleep a maximum of 4.6 hours a day.
And rarely continuously. They engage in short bursts of slow-wave sleep while standing perfectly upright. They only risk lying down when they absolutely need to enter deep REM sleep.
And even then, they have to contort themselves. To maintain balance and protect the neck while on the ground, they twist their cervical spine completely backward, resting their massive skull directly on their own hip.
Yeah, they turn themselves into an asymmetrical pretzel just to achieve a few minutes of REM sleep without dying.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. With such unique social bonds and fragile biology, how do they survive right from the start? Because that relentless pressure from predators dictates the very first moments of a giraffe's life.
The birth is terrifying.
Right. The mother, after her 400-day gestation, gives birth completely standing up. So the calf's introduction to the world is a violent 2-meter free fall straight down to the hard earth.
It seems so brutal, but the mechanics of that drop are actually essential. The impact violently bursts the amniotic sac and applies the necessary kinetic force to snap the thick umbilical cord. It basically shocks the calf's respiratory system into drawing its first breath.
Wow.
And within an hour, that calf has to be standing, walking, and ready to run. Because a newborn giraffe is a prime target for leopards, hyenas, and lions.
But to counter that threat, that matriarchal society we talked about kicks in. The mothers establish calving pools.
Basically nursery herds.
Right. Rather than every mother trying to protect her calf individually while foraging, 1 or 2 females will stand guard over a collective nursery of calves. This allows the other mothers the freedom to travel further for the massive caloric intake they need to produce milk.
It's a beautiful symbiosis, and this vigilance system is so effective that other species actually hijack it.
Well,
Zebras and wildebeests. They will intentionally alter their migration paths to graze alongside giraffe herds. They use the giraffes as living 20-foot watchtowers. The moment the giraffes spot a lion hidden in the tall grass and react, the zebras use that visual cue as an early warning system.
that is incredible. They are literally the watchtowers of the savannah. And humans have recognized this towering presence for millennia, too. They are etched into 8,000-year-old Saharan rock art and possess their own distinct hieroglyph in ancient Egypt.
They've always captivated us.
There is even a fascinating cultural tradition among the Hummer people of Kordofan in Sudan. They prepare a specialized drink called nuok, which is derived from the liver and bone marrow of the giraffe. The local tradition holds that consuming the drink induces vivid hallucinations, which they interpret as the ghosts of the giraffes returning to communicate with the living.
Which is such a striking image. And that deep spiritual reverence makes the current reality of this species incredibly difficult to process. I mean, ecologists refer to the giraffe's current trajectory as a silent extinction.
A silent extinction. Why silent?
Because they are fixtures in every zoo, and they serve as iconic children's toys, so the general public just assumes their populations are thriving.
But the data tells a deeply alarming story. In 1985, an estimated 155,000 giraffes roamed the wild. Today, that number has crashed to roughly 97,500.
Yeah. They're quietly vanishing from the landscape.
What's driving it?
The primary drivers are severe habitat fragmentation, as agricultural expansion carves up their continuous ranges, the illegal bushmeat trade, and of course, the accelerating impacts of climate change. As severe droughts become the norm in regions like northern Kenya, water sources evaporate, and the canopy foliage dies off.
Right.
This forces desperate pastoral herders and their livestock directly into the remaining wildlife reserves. It sparks intense, often fatal competition over the last remaining resources.
It is a convergence of pressures that strikes directly at the vulnerabilities of their extreme biology. So for you listening, the next time you encounter a giraffe, you aren't just looking at a tall, peaceful herbivore.
No, not at all.
You are looking at a deeply complex, socially intelligent marvel of cardiovascular engineering. An organism that pushes the absolute boundaries of hemodynamics, whose very shape is a testament to the endurance of mothers, and whose humming society is quietly disappearing while we look the other way.
They are a true masterclass in biological engineering and resilience. But analyzing their evolutionary history, this raises an important question we need to consider.
What's that?
We know from the fossil record of Samotherium that the giraffe evolved its extreme height 8 million years ago, precisely because its environment transformed from a lush, generous forest into a harsh, dry savanna. They conquered that climate shift through spectacular extreme anatomical adaptation.
Right.
But now, as human-driven climate change rapidly transforms their habitats once again, introducing unprecedented droughts and resource collapse, will the giraffe's highly specialized, fragile cardiovascular system allow it to adapt to this new era? Or has this biological marvel finally painted itself into an evolutionary corner?
Man, it is a heavy, essential question that demands our attention. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you, and we'll see you next time.